travel for work. I usually avoid chain hotels. There's something about old inns and family-run places that feels more human, more alive. But last fall, I stayed somewhere that was too alive. I was on my way to a client meeting in Vermont and decided to spend the night at a place called Black Hollow Inn. It didn't show up on Google Maps unless you zoomed in real close. But the photos looked rustic and charming. Wood-paneled walls, iron keys, a fireplace in every room. It felt like a page torn from a forgotten century. I booked directly from their website. The only room available was something called the Elder Room. The name gave me pause, but I went ahead with it. When I arrived, the sun was just beginning to set. The inn sat at the edge of a forest road, half shrouded in mist and towering pine trees. The gravel lot was completely empty. Inside, it smelled like cedarwood and old paper. A thin woman stood behind the counter, her face tight with a tired smile. She didn't ask for ID or a credit card, just handed me a heavy brass key and a folded sheet of paper. "This is very important," she said, sliding it toward me. "The house has rules. Please, follow them." She said it like someone warning you not to smoke indoors, calm, but with a subtle tension in her eyes. The paper read, "Black Hollow Inn, guest rules for the Elder Room. Do not look into the mirror between midnight and 3 a.m. If you hear knocking on your window, ignore it. You're on the second floor. Leave a light on in the bathroom overnight. Just one. Do not respond to your name if you hear it whispered, especially if you're alone. The rocking chair is for them. Do not sit in it. If you wake and the door is open, pretend to sleep. Check out by sunrise, no exceptions." I chuckled when I read it, figured it was a creepy local gimmick, part of the charm, but the woman didn't laugh. She simply said, "Room 217, end of the hall. Elder Room's been quiet lately, but keep the rules." She lowered her voice on that last part. I should have listened more carefully. Room 217 was beautiful, in a cold, dust-laced kind of way. Heavy wardrobe, ornate writing desk, and yes, a fireplace and a single rocking chair in the corner, just like the pictures. A tall Victorian mirror hung above the dresser, warped with age, the kind that makes you look almost wrong. I unpacked, ate the sandwich I'd brought, and caught up on emails until around 11 p.m. That's when I noticed something oddly. The rocking chair had moved, barely 2 inches, but it had definitely been closer to the fireplace before. I tried to convince myself I'd bumped it earlier. Without noticing, I brushed my teeth, left the bathroom light on, Rule 3, and got into bed. At exactly 12:42 a.m., I woke up to 3 deliberate knocks. Not on the door, on the window. Slow, measured. Knock, knock, knock. My room was on the second floor. No balcony, no ledge, just open air and trees. I sat upright in the dark, staring at the curtains. Then came the sound again, this time softer, more insistent, like someone dragging their knuckles slowly across the glass. I reached for my phone. No signal. Tried again. Nothing. My heart was hammering. I was sweating, shivering, breath shallow. Then the screen lit up. The phone rang. I grabbed it. "Hello?" It was the receptionist. I tried to stay calm as I explained what I'd heard. The knocking, my name, whispered, something moving in the room. I begged him to come up. "I'll be there in a few minutes," he said, voice flat and low. Exactly 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I jumped out of bed and ran to open it, thinking help had arrived. But there was no one there. No footsteps retreating. No creaking floorboards. Just silence. I backed into the room, heart racing, when the phone rang again. Same voice, same calm tone. "I told you I'd be there." I froze. Someone knocked. "Was that you?" A pause. Then, his voice sharpened, almost a growl. "You're in the elder room. You follow the rules, or the elder will punish you." Terrified, my blood went cold. The phone went dead. Then, from the mirror, I heard my name, not spoken, whispered, and not just once. It came from behind me. I turned slowly, no one there, but the chair rocked. Once, then stopped. I crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over me like a child hiding from the dark. At 3:17 a.m., I made a mistake. I looked at the mirror. The glass shimmered. My reflection stood perfectly still, not breathing. It raised a hand and pressed it against the glass, palm flat, like it wanted out. I scrambled for the bedsheet and threw it over the mirror. That's when the door creaked open. I didn't move. Rule 6. Pretend to sleep. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor, slow, dragging. The air turned ice cold. Something wet dripped onto the wood. Then the chair began to rock. Forward, back, forward, back. And then the whispering returned. Dozens of voices, not from one place, but from everywhere. The walls, the mirror, inside my skull. I don't remember passing out. I woke to sunlight cutting through the curtains. The door was closed. The chair, still. Only one thing had changed. The sheet I draped over the mirror was gone. In its place, written in foggy condensation, "You stayed past your welcome." I packed in record time, raced down the hall. No one was at the front desk. No staff, no other guests. Just my brass key sitting alone, and the rule sheet torn in two. I drove off, without looking back. That was 6 months ago, but now, every time I pass a mirror, I swear I catch a glimpse of something that isn't quite me, and sometimes, just before I drift off to sleep, I hear the soft, steady creak of a chair rocking slowly in the corner of my room.
There was something inherently unsettling about the dark, with a growing sense of dread. It was more than just the absence of light. It was the feeling of something waiting, unseen, its presence pressing against the edges of reality. I was 8 when I moved into that room, the one at the back of the house. My older brother had finally gotten his own room, and while I was initially excited to sleep in a room of my own, I had no idea how wrong I was. The room was small, narrow, just enough space for a bed and a few drawers. And the window, it was just a window, a sliver of light that could never quite reach the corners, as if the house itself was hiding something from me. But it wasn't the room that was the problem. It was what was in it. It started with a whisper, a sound so faint it could be ignored. But then, it grew. At first I thought it was the cat. It had to be. But as I lay in the top bunk staring down at my toys on the floor, something kept tugging at the corner of my vision. My eyes drifted towards the bottom bunk. It was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, waiting. It's funny how childhood imagination can take over, how the mind can fill in the gaps with what it doesn't understand. That night, I woke to the rustling of sheets. No, not rustling, tossing and turning. Violent, frantic movements that shouldn't have been there. I tried to convince myself it was the cat, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't the soft patter of a pet trying to settle in. This was something else. I could hear the sheets twisting in a way that wasn't natural. Something was there. Panic set in as I stayed frozen, unable to move. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My heart raced. The rustling intensified, almost as though whatever it was aware of me, aware that I had heard it. I barely dared to move. And then it stopped. For a brief, terrifying moment, the room was silent. Just as I thought I might be able to breathe again, the bed shook violently, as though gripped by an unseen hand. The sound was deafening, like a tremor shaking the very foundation of the house. I screamed, finally, calling for my mother, my voice high and strained with fear. The sound of footsteps, I thought I was safe, but when the door opened, the bed was calm, peaceful. The bottom bunk was just as I had left it.
Night after night, I thought the same battle, the same sounds, the same fear. The thing in the bottom bunk became a nightly terror. My mother stayed with me, and I slept soundly only when she was there. But as soon as she left, the fear would return. And it wasn't just at night. During the day, I could feel it watching me, lurking in the corners of my mind. Every time I looked at that room, every time I returned to it at night, that sense of something not quite right would seize me. On the second night of my newfound solitude, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, too terrified to move. I thought about the thing in the bottom bunk and the word that had come to me in the dark. Ghost. A slow, labored breath escaped from the thing beneath me. A breath that didn't belong to a human. I froze. It wasn't moving now, but it was still there, that low, wheezing sound, closer than before. It was waiting. I could feel it. The air grew heavier, thicker, as if something was pressing in, forcing me to stay still, to remain silent. And then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of fingers tapping lightly on the wooden slats of the bunk beneath me. I shuddered, but I didn't dare move. The bed creaked. It was closer now. Sitting up, the space between us, once a safe barrier, had now become a trap. Its breath, cold and fetid, seemed to vibrate through the thin mattress. I lay there, paralyzed, not knowing if I should scream or stay silent. The silence between us stretched on, thick with tension. And then, with a flicker of movement, I felt it. The thing reached out, its bony fingers prodding through the mattress. I couldn't tell if it was reaching for me or simply sensing my fear, but I knew it was getting closer. I cried out once again, and this time the bed shook more violently than ever. The door burst open. My mother rushed in, and the thing in the bunk vanished. Once again, I was left in a room empty of whatever had been there. But it didn't matter. I couldn't speak about it. I was too terrified to even whisper a word. If I said anything, I feared it would return. Days passed. The terror of that room never truly left.
I learned to ignore it, to pretend that it wasn't there, but deep down I knew that it would come back. And it did. But something changed. The presence didn't stay in the bottom bunk anymore. It grew stronger, more active, more aware. It wasn't just content with lurking in the dark. It wanted to be seen. It was no longer the faint sounds of rustling. No. This time the noise was purposeful, heavy, deliberate. It wanted me to know it was there. One night, it rose from the bottom bunk, slowly, and the breath, the sound of the wheezing, choking air. I could hear it getting closer to me. I could feel the weight of its presence pushing against the air, thick and suffocating. I heard the soft scrape of its fingers on the floorboards as it moved. And then the whisper, "Look behind you." My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly turned my head. I didn't want to. I couldn't, but I had no choice. There, sitting in the darkness, was the outline of a figure. I couldn't make out its features, but I felt its eyes on me. Empty, hollow eyes that bored into my soul. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. In the days that followed, I became consumed by my fear. Every noise, every creak of the floor, every rustling of sheets filled me with dread. The thing had grown stronger, more confident. I began to avoid the room altogether, but eventually my family grew concerned. They didn't understand. They never would. On the night my mother left, I decided that enough was enough. I had to do something. I couldn't live in fear anymore. I moved the bed away from the wall, hoping to keep the thing at bay.
But I knew, deep down, it was only a temporary solution. And then it happened. One night, as I lay in the bunk, I felt it. The weight pressing down on me. The fingers, cold and bony, slipping across my skin. I knew it was coming for me. But this time, I was ready. I would not be its victim anymore. I grabbed the crucifix that had been given to me, clutching it tightly in my hand. I whispered the words of prayer, trying to summon all the strength I could find. It was too late. The thing reached out from the darkness, its claws sharp and merciless. I could feel its breath, hot and foul against my neck. And then the world went dark. I don't know what happened that night. Maybe it was the crucifix. Maybe it was my resolve. But whatever it was, the thing never returned. I moved to another room, another house. The nightmares faded with time, but the fear never did. Now, as an adult, I lie awake in bed, my eyes always scanning the corners of the room. I still hear the whispers and the wheezing breath. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder, what if it never really left? What if it's still waiting?